The room spun slightly, fever making everything blur at the edges. I pressed a cool hand to my forehead, the heat radiating through my palm. My silk robe clung uncomfortably to damp skin. The doorbell echoed through my Manhattan apartment, and I forced myself up, one hand gripping the doorframe for balance. Come in. I called weakly, unlocking the door. Dr. Michael stood there, medical bag in hand, looking exactly as I remembered from college, just with a few distinguished gray streaks. At his temples, his eyes widened in recognition. Patricia? His voice held that same deep timbre that used to make my stomach flutter during study sessions. Michael. I managed a weak smile. Small world. His professional demeanor wavered for just a moment before he stepped inside. Let's get you checked out. In the living room, I sank onto the couch, pulling my robe tighter. He knelt beside me, removing his stethoscope with practiced ease. His fingers brushed my wrist as he checked my pulse. And despite the fever, I felt something else entirely. Before we dive in, take a quick second to like this video and hit subscribe. It's completely free and helps the channel grow more than you know. Now let's continue. Deep breath. He murmured, placing the stethoscope against my chest. The cold metal made me shiver. Or maybe it was his proximity. His cologne was different now, more sophisticated than the cheap aftershave he wore in college. Another. His voice had dropped. Lower. I inhaled slowly, hyper-aware of how the thin silk barely provided any barrier between us. His eyes met mine briefly, before he cleared his throat, moving to check my lymph nodes. His fingers traced along my jawline, down my neck, professional, yet somehow intimate. Any pain here? His touch lingered just below my ear. No. I whispered. He moved behind me, gently pulling my hair aside to examine my neck. His breath was warm against my skin as he worked, and I closed my eyes, remembering. Late nights in the library, stolen glances, the almost kiss at graduation that never happened. You're burning up, he said softly. We need to bring this fever down. I nodded, then swayed slightly. His arm came around my waist, instantly steadying me. Easy. His voice was close to my ear. When was the last time you ate? Yesterday, maybe? Everything felt foggy. He helped me lie back on the couch, his hands gentle but sure. I'm going to check your abdomen. Is that okay? I nodded, watching, as he carefully parted my robe just enough to expose my stomach. His fingers pressed gently, professionally, but the contact sent warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with fever. Does this hurt? He pressed slightly lower. I shook, my head biting my lip as his examination continued. His touch remained clinical, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of the same electricity I felt. Patricia, he said quietly, sitting back on his heels. Your fever's quite high. I should probably... He paused, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from when he was nervous about exams. Probably what? My voice came out breathier than intended. I should do a more thorough examination, make sure there's no infection. His eyes held mine. If you're comfortable with that? The air between us shifted, charged with unspoken history and present tension. I nodded slowly. He stood, removing his jacket and rolling up his sleeves. I watched the precise movements, remembering how those hands used to gesture wildly during debates about medieval literature. I need to check for any skin abnormalities, rashes that might indicate infection. He explained, his voice professionally steady. May I? I sat up slightly, letting the robe slip from my shoulders. His intake of breath was almost imperceptible. His hands started at my shoulders, fingertips tracing down my arms with methodical precision. Every touch was medical, justified yet laden with something more. When he reached my wrists, he paused, thumb brushing over my pulse point. Your heart rate's elevated, he murmured. Must be the fever. I managed, a ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Must be. He moved to examine my back, his fingers skating across my skin, checking for inflammation, for anything unusual. I shivered as he traced down my spine. Cold? He asked. No. His hands stilled for a moment, then continued their path. When he moved back around to face me, his eyes had darkened. "I need to check your chest area," he said quietly. "Lymph nodes, possible respiratory issues." I nodded, unable to speak, as his fingers moved to my collarbone, tracing the delicate bones with professional interest that couldn't quite mask something deeper. His touch dipped lower, following the curve of my chest, ostensibly checking for swelling for problems. My breath caught as his examination grew more thorough, his fingers mapping areas that made my pulse race. He was still being professional, still maintaining the pretense, but we both knew this had crossed a line. "Michael," I whispered. His hands stilled. He looked up at me, and for a moment we were back in college. The tension, the wanting, the reasons we never acted on it all falling away. "I should stop," he said roughly. "Should you?" His control visibly wavered. "Patricia, you're my patient right now. And 20 years ago, I was your study partner." I reached up, fingers grazing his cheek. "We never did finish what we started." He closed his eyes briefly, leaning into my touch. "You have a fever. You're not thinking clearly. My thinking's never been clearer." I sat up, fully letting the robe fall completely away. "I've thought about this." For 20 years, his resolve crumbled. His hands, no longer pretending to be clinical, pulled me against him. Our lips met, and it was like no time had passed at all, except now we knew what we wanted. No longer held back by youth and uncertainty, his kiss was deep, hungry. 2 decades of wondering poured into this moment. I tugged at his shirt, needing to feel skin against skin. He broke away just long enough to pull it over his head. Then his mouth was on my neck, tracing the path his stethoscope had taken earlier. "The fever." He murmured against my skin, one last attempt at reason. "The only fever I have is for you." I gasped as his lips moved lower. His laugh was low, rough. "That's a terrible line. Blame the delirium," I breathed, threatening. My fingers through his hair as his mouth continued its exploration. His hands mapped my body with the same thorough attention he'd shown as a doctor, but now with purely personal interest. Every touch drew a response. Every kiss stoked the fire between us higher, when his lips found particularly sensitive spots. I arched beneath him, medical examination completely forgotten. He pulled back slightly, eyes dark with desire. "Tell me you want this?" "I've wanted this since junior year." I admitted that was all he needed. His mouth claimed mine again as he lifted me, carrying me to the bedroom with the same care he'd shown as my doctor, but with entirely different intentions. He laid me on the bed gently, then stood back for a moment, just looking. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." "You imagined every day." He joined me on the bed, his weight settling over me, especially after that almost kiss at graduation. "Why didn't you?" I asked, wrapping my arms around his neck. "You were leaving for Paris. I was starting my residency." "The timing. Screw timing." I pulled him down for another kiss. He responded eagerly, his hands reacquainting themselves with every curve, every sensitive spot. When his fingers trailed down my stomach lower, I gasped into his mouth. "Still sure?" he asked, pausing. "Michael." I breathed. "I've waited 20 years. Don't make me wait any longer." He didn't. What followed was a slow exploration, a careful stoking of fires that had been banked for too long. He took his time despite my impatience, mapping every inch of me with lips and tongue and clever fingers. By the time he finally joined with me, I was trembling with need. "Look at me," he commanded softly as our bodies connected. I opened eyes. I hadn't realized I'd closed, meeting his gaze as he began to move. The intensity there, the raw emotion, nearly undid me. "I should have kissed you that day." He breathed, setting a rhythm that made thought impossible. "You're kissing me now," I managed, making up for lost time. His pace quickened, drawing gasps from both of us. The fever made everything more intense, or maybe it was just him. Just us. Just 20 years of waiting, finally ending. I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him deeper, needing more. "Patricia." He groaned, his control slipping. "Don't stop." I pleaded. "Please don't stop." He didn't. The rhythm between us built steady and sure, like a classical piece reaching its crescendo. When release finally claimed me, I cried out his name nails, digging into his shoulders. He followed moments later, my name a prayer on his lips. We lay tangled together afterward, breathing heavily, skin damp with exertion. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Your fever's broken, he murmured. I laughed weakly. Miracle cure? Something like that. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin. Though I might need to schedule a follow-up appointment. Daily checkups? I suggested. At least, he pulled me closer. Very thorough examinations. I smiled. Against his chest. I should get sick more often? Or, he tipped my chin up to look at him. We could skip the pretense. What happened to doctor-patient ethics? I'll refer you to someone else for actual medical care. He said seriously, because I have entirely unprofessional intentions toward you. Just now figuring that out? He kissed me softly. No. Just now admitting it. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other, making up for 2 decades of missed opportunities. Later, he made me soup and made sure I took proper medicine for my actual fever. But the best medicine was his presence. His touch, the knowledge that sometimes timing doesn't matter. Only the connection does. Stay. I said as evening approached, I have hospital. Rounds in the morning, he warned. I have a gallery opening tomorrow night. I countered, be my date? His smile was answer enough. Only if you promise to let me play doctor again afterward. I think that can be arranged. I murmured, pulling him back to bed. But first I need another examination. I'm feeling feverish again. His laugh was rich, warm. Patricia Chen, you're going to be the death of me. Worth it? I asked, already knowing the answer. 20 years of worth it? He confirmed. And proceeded to prove it all over again. The fever was gone by morning, but the heat between us remained. Some things, it seemed, were worth the wait. And some house calls were worth every moment of delayed gratification as I watched him dress. For his hospital rounds, I couldn't help but smile. Same time tomorrow, doctor? He leaned down to kiss me. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Just a wild patient. I teased. My favorite kind. He murmured against my lips. Sometimes the best medicine isn't found in any medical bag. Sometimes it's found in finally taking the chance you should have taken years ago. And sometimes a house call leads to something much more permanent than a cure for fever. Have you ever reconnected with someone from your past and wondered what might have been? Did you take that second chance when it appeared? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories. Thanks for watching.